Greetings aspirants. Happy Advanced Women's Day to all of you. Welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Ananta Krishna, and in this session of daily news analysis, we have picked up certain important articles from Hindu as well as Indian Express. Before getting into the topics that we have chosen for today's analysis, I have one request for you all. The 45 years of academic excellence is at your doorstep. The adequate, up-to-date and accurate learning through this channel will make you proximate to the success in this UPSC Civil Service examination. For all this, you have to do is hit the bell icon that you are seeing below and remain subscribed to our channel Narayana IAS. We shall move to the articles that we have chosen for today's analysis. The first article that we have chosen is from the Hindu, which is titled "Trees in Corbett Fell Prey to the Greedy Nexus, says Supreme Court." Alongside, we also want to discuss the human-wildlife conflict, a state-specific disaster as announced by the Kerala government, which is published on page number 6. The second article that we have chosen is from the Indian Express, where they are trying to delve into the issues that are structured in our society in the form of the gender-related disparities, titled "An Antidote" called Empathy on page number 12. The third article that we have chosen is again from the Indian Express, which is looking into the mineral exploration and the related regulations which the industry body is looking into, titled "Mining Exploration, Industry Pushes for More Investor-Friendly Model," page number 13. Fourth article that we have chosen is from the Indian Express, where the title is "RBI directs card issuers to let customers choose their card network, giving them more choice as consumers." Moving to the next article, which is from the Hindu, which is titled "What Makes ASMI's Chip-Making Machine a Scientific Marvel." Moving ahead, we also have another article, which is the final article again from the Hindu, where it is titled "Ensure that Pakistan does not divert loans to foot defense bills," as published in page number 1. Lastly, we also have certain practice questions from both preliminary and main examination point of view. With that, we will be concluding today's analysis. Let's move to the first article that we have chosen for today's analysis. Dear students, embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses include robust R&D backed initiatives such as daily news analysis, daily news review, which are comprehensive review program for a broader understanding of our day-to-day happenings, which are current affairs. Similarly, we have NCERT program, which is a foundational course that covers all the NCERT syllabi, which is crucial for UPSC preparation. We also have a mentorship program for personalized guidance, and we also have a regular test series for systematic learning and assessment of the student. So begin your journey to become a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. Embark on this journey, make your dream come into a reality with Narayana IAS Academy. In this article, the Supreme Court is making the observation that the human wants are at conflict with the ecological needs. The title, but you see here, where the trees in Corbett fell prey to the greedy nexus, says Supreme Court, is clearly focusing upon this political bureaucratic nexus, which is having conflict with the ecological sustenance which we have to aspire for. This article is important from environmental conservation point of view and also the human-wildlife conflict which are at increase as of now, and this is also becomes a relevant thing for your examination. Look at this previous year question asked in 2018. How does biodiversity vary in India? How is the Biological Diversity Act 2002 helpful in conservation of flora and fauna? Looking at this question, you can clearly establish that this can also become an important aspect for your main examination. As you see here, the Supreme Court judgment regarding the illegal felling of trees in the Jim Corbett National Park in Uttarakhand highlighted the consequences of human greed on the environment. This human greed on the environment is clearly showing, as I have already said, the conflict between our wants which are exceeding the ecological carrying capacity. Moreover, what you see here in these observations is that with regard to this ecologically exploitative acts, it said the short-term commercial gains are becoming prominent for the individuals. Second, as you clearly see, given the place of these tigers at the highest level of energy pyramid, their importance in terms of interdependence of tigers and the entire ecosystem becomes more fundamental. Third, when you see that the presence of tigers is increasing, then it becomes an indication for the more and more well-being of that particular ecosystem. And hence, the court has directed the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change to form a specialized committee to investigate why these fellings have occurred and to investigate whether there is any need for the tiger safaris within the buffer areas of the tiger reserves. And as you clearly see, this committee would include the National Tiger Conservation Authority and the Wildlife Institute of India in order to assess to what extent the damage has occurred and how to quantify the restoration costs and whom to be held responsible in order to make applicability of the legal remedies which have to be applied on those individuals or parties. Moving ahead, moreover, the committee's recommendations whether to allow tiger safaris in buffer areas or not must also be associated with the guidelines if it concludes that it must be allowed. Moreover, Supreme Court has also endorsed CBI to probe into this matter, giving it. Moreover, this also shows the importance that the Supreme Court has attached when it said that it must be inquired by the CBI. On the other hand, what you see is that the Kerala cabinet has declared the human-wildlife conflict as a state-specific disaster. Now, this is being done because it has been observed that there are increasing incidents of wildlife encroachment and these conflicts are also hence on the rise. Now, the Kerala State Disaster Management Authority is in a position because of this definition to take up certain proactive measures to mitigate such conflicts, including forming committees and neighborhood watch groups. On the other hand, this also has the danger that this might take into consideration the Forest Rights Act and they might start violating whatever the rights that the Forest Rights Act has conferred upon those tribes and communities which live in the vicinity of the forest. So, the balance must be drawn. Here, the human-wildlife conflict are, as you see, encounters between humans and wildlife where these encounters are leading to negative results such as loss of property or livelihoods or even the life. Second, you will observe that the World Bank says that 24% of the national biodiversity strategies and action plans consider human-wildlife conflict to be a significant national issue for biodiversity conservation. Both of them are interdependent. The reasons why this particular human-wildlife conflict is on the rise is because, one, the human expansion in terms of the habitat of the animals or the biodiversity is on the rise, because of which there is also fragmentation of these particular habitat. As this fragmentation happens, there is disconnect between the contiguity that has to be there over this entire ecosystem. Second, the land use transformation is also another problem that you see, wherein land is being transformed into the agricultural use or industrial use rather than keeping it with. This land use transformation is the second problem. Third, the disasters also are increasing these particular conflicts, because of which the migration of these animals into human habitations is occurring. Fourth, the forest-based livelihoods in a way are also causing these particular damages. Fifth, there is also this involvement of wildlife trade and poaching because of the involvement of many international players in this, which are non-state actors. And then there are such possibilities wherein the infections, road killings because of the presence of infrastructural facilities such as roads and the electrical connectivity, all these are also causing such human-wildlife conflict. What must be done for this? Minimize the habitat overlap between humans and wildlife. Second, the community-based natural resource management must be structured in tune with the Forest Rights Act. Third, the environmental impact assessment must be considered must be done whenever infrastructure project has been taken up. Then the early warning and deterrent systems can also be put into place. Moreover, the wildlife corridors can be considered, whereby you can put up what is referred to as eco bridges, such that there is safe wildlife migration. On the other hand, there can be the possibility of this biofencing, and more importantly, the application of technology and sensitization of the issue in terms of education and awareness must also be considered. In this particular thing, there is National Human Wildlife Conflict Mitigation Strategy and Action Plan that we already have in place for these years 2021 to 2026. This is a guiding document alone where the holistic mitigation has been considered. One, address all those drivers of this particular human-wildlife conflict as we have seen, such as the habitat fragmentation. Second, reduce the pressure on these particular habitats, whereby you can have physical barriers or even the habitat enrichment as such ideas. Third, there must be availability of real-time data and information with regard to such conflicts. Fourth, you also reduce the negative impacts, whereby the loss of life or injury or such other loss in terms of property can be addressed. Moreover, you have to strengthen the institutions right from the research institution to the executive institutions, whereby the financial and institutional structures for the sustained long-term implementation of these measures can also be considered. Moving to the next article, we will discuss this article titled An Antidote Called Empathy. In this particular article, the focus is on what is referred to as the dominance and power-ridden institutions in India, making the society completely oriented towards a society which is masculine. Rather than this, the paradigm shift must happen towards the ideas of care and empathy. We shall look into the details of this particular article. This article is important from the perspective of the ethics and human interface, which is significant for our Indian society. Empathy as emotional intelligence, ethical framework of this idea of equality and justice are part and parcel of your ethics syllabus. And these ideas would be not only the determinants of ethics, but also they are influencing the ethics as the fundamental requirement in various human interface. Moving ahead, look at this previous year question. Identify 5 ethical traits on which one can plot the performance of a civil servant. Justify their inclusion in the matrix. Asked in 2021. Clearly, it is focusing upon those concerns of the Indian society which can be asked in the exam, not only as a case study but also as a substantial question where your understanding will be tested. In this particular topic, we will be focusing upon empathy as a requirement and certain other tectonic changes which have to be made not only in the society but also in the disciplinary understanding of our society, not just in India but across the world, whereby these tectonic shifts will move towards a society which is better in progressive in terms of equality and justice as fundamental principles. Look at the context. The Indian society can only be considered as a just society and relatively equal society when country, as you see, can get what is referred to as feminized. Feminized here doesn't mean that you are attributing to more powerful women or you are attributing society to give more powers to women or you are attributing to the society which is structurally driven by power which is in the hands of women. No, you are attributing to a society where the current structure of dominance and power is giving way to what is referred to as more equal and just society on the basis of certain fundamental tectonic shifts which must be intruded into the society of India. Not just India but across the world, as I said earlier. What does this particular thing mean? You go back to your fundamental textbook, the NCERT textbook. In this particular textbook, you might have read that all the household work is not part of measurement of national income. This is what you read in your textbook, by which you are saying that most of the productive activity that happens in a particular family, in a particular household, is being removed from the measurement of economic activity, by which you are saying that this household work is not a economic activity, by which you are saying that whatever you do in the family as part of this household work, how much ever the effort which is involved, how much ever labor it may extract from it, it is not being considered for the purposes of the economic activity by definition. This is what you read. Now you look at the negative connotations of whatever that particular definition or statement that you read in the NCERT textbook. Whenever you see your family members being involved in such activity, there you would be clearly seeing that their labor is being extracted without any possible remuneration to such labor. On the other hand, when you are working for a particular company, you would see that their labor is being rewarded. These two particular demarcations structurally would occur because of this disciplinary understanding. Now, what is the basic fundamental criteria on the basis of which such demarcation has been made? And it is this particular basic criteria which is also flawed in the understanding of our Indian economy, for that matter any economy across the world. Now, this particular criteria, as I refer to, would make in general economics itself an unethical subject, as many economics would say. There was a rush to make this particular discipline what is referred to as scientific. Now, what do I mean by these two particular expressions? Let us go back to the basics. We know that we are faced with this challenge of scarcity, number one. And number two, as there is scarcity, you would see that even if you consider the current society across the world, which is of more than 7 billion population, they would be competing for these scarce resources. Hence, competition for these resources is unavoidable. But if you recall, the competition for resources is unavoidable because our living has to continue. And if you look at the basic definition of any economics textbook, you would see that economics is all about dealing with those which are concerned with one's living. If you look at what is concerning one's living, that would be your basic necessities, and these are what you refer to as need, and those particular aspirations you might have which are referred to as want. As you fulfill both of these, then you might think that your life is being led, you are living satisfactorily. This is what we refer to as the standard of living in economics, standard of living. If you look at these three now, and if you look at its application for the entire societies across the world, there are three fundamental things which emerge. One, any society, as you refer to, is having this challenge of scarcity. And if you look at the definition of society, this scarcity and society are interacting through what is called as land. Society in general will have three components. Land is one. If in the economic sense, land refers to those scarce resources that we are referring to. Second, you have what is called as people in the society, whereby for economics, you find that these people are being categorized into producers and consumers. Third, you would also have this situation of material surplus for the society, where unless and until you have surplus, unlike what you saw in Pakistan and Sri Lanka recently, where there were fight for food, you are also seeing this happening in Gaza Strip, that is in Palestine. Unless and until there is material surplus, there will not be peace in the society, and hence there will not be sustenance of the society. And as you see this becomes fundamental for the sustained existence of that particular community or society, which is what in fact is referring to the producers producing what you want and consumers getting whatever has been produced in order to lead their particular living sustainably. Now, focus on both of these aspects and how they get connected with all this fundamental understanding. As you clearly see, the producers and consumers are interacting because they are mutually interdependent. That means society is fundamentally based on this idea of mutual interdependence. This mutual interdependence economically will occur in the form of economic exchanges between producers and consumers, and these economic exchanges would be occurring easily whenever there is intermediaries. There are two such intermediaries that we have to focus upon. One is money and the other one is what is referred to as market. So for any particular exchange you have to pay money, and as you are paying money it is going to the producer, and hence he is making some income out of this particular exchange. On the other hand, this would occur under market condition, by which it means that there is competition. So in terms of production there is competition. There are various players who are competing to produce similar goods, and on the other hand, even in terms of consumption there is competition, and this is where you emerge to see what is called as price mechanism. This is how the economics would function in this particular aspect. Now if you start looking at these particular understandings, clearly you are seeing two things. One, theoretically one has to understand what is happening, and two, this has to be measured because the resources are scarce. How many scarce resources are there? How they are getting distributed to the entire community? Unless and until I measure this, it would not be possible for me to see either the resources are available for all of the members of the community to meet those even minimum requirements that they have. In order to measure, now comes the problem. As you are trying to measure an activity in terms of what is referred to as an economic activity, you are trying to measure production and you are trying to measure consumption, and this is what actually translates into measurement of national income. In this particular measurement, the problem is you can measure it only when this intermediary is involved, that is money. So every transaction where money is involved, you are measuring it. Wherever there is no money involved, then you are not able to measure it, and simply you are discarding it as an activity which is not economic. It is fundamentally because of this all the household work has been eliminated from the considerations of economic activity. Now you look at how production is being defined in technical terms. Production you refer to whenever you measure it in terms of supply, and consumption you refer to in terms of demand. And whenever you are referring to supply, it is referred to as ability to produce. Similarly, ability to pay. When you are referring to this ability to pay, your willingness to pay, your ability to pay must translate into a transaction. That's when it is consumption. This ability to pay is being expressed in terms of money. So when you are involved in production activity alone, which is producing certain goods and services, then only you will have the ability to pay because you are earning certain income. All this would be considered as economic activity. All that is not involved with money is not being considered as economic activity, and hence by definition whoever is involved in the household work, they do not have the ability to pay. At one stroke, all this activity has been removed from the understanding of economics. This is where it has become or emerged to be unethical. This is what economists say. Now what is the consequence of this? As you clearly see that in any particular society, much of the care within the family is being given by one particular gender. As this particular gender is now automatically being eliminated from this economic activity, they are being eliminated from the considerations of calculating in the measurement of the economic activity. Second, as you clearly see, this becomes the fundamental aspect of the society because you are producing the very much required the material surplus. So whoever is participating in the creation of this material surplus, their work is being valued. On the other hand, whoever is not able to participate in this material surplus as a creation, which is the fundamental requirement for sustenance of the society, are not being considered as valued. This structural demarcation happened because of such notional definition that we have incorporated in the basics of economy. Now you see what is happening because of this. Clearly, there is competition, and in this particular competition, that is between few males and the other males who are participating in the production process by definition, because much of the household activity has been removed, and as this is being removed, competition is leading to a masculine structure in the society. Second, on the other hand, this will also have certain comparisons. My work is being valued and hence I am more powerful and hence my attitude has to be dominant rather than what you have in terms of the household care that is being rendered by the other gender. As you see here, this starts leading to your self-appraisal and self-care and self. As a consequence, what you see is there is an ethical dilemma which emerges. In this ethical dilemma, you will be focusing upon your own self-care more than whatever the empathy that you must have towards the others. The competition will lead to what is referred to as your own selfishness, preserving and promoting your selfishness over the collective interest. Second, this will also have this consequence of lack of recognition to the other sort of work that is being done by the other genders. In this recognition, if I see it as an affirmative action, recognition as an affirmative action, it is being neglected. On the other hand, if I am doing that particular work which is of household nature, then it will be having the ideas of stigmatization, because generations together, culturally, I would be limiting myself to or forced to limit myself to this household work, and hence this gets stigmatized over time. So stigmatized will have the negative consequences over the same members of the household who are involved in the care work. Third, as you are not valuing care because of these and also because of the fundamental definition that we have seen, you would see that it will lead to lot of discrimination and hence ultimately inequality and injustice. What has to be done? At the institutional level and also at the disciplinary level, there have to be a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is towards particularly the feminization of institutions, by which it means that fundamentally, in principle, as an economic activity, whatever you are defining, or a political activity as you are defining, must include all those activities which have to be valued on par with those activities which are referred to as economic activity. Second, for this, the dominant sections of the society, particularly the masculine section, must become empathetic in their character. Hence, they must enter into the shoes of the other gender, understand their problems from their own experiences perspective by not imposing your ideas, your thought processes on these perspectives, and start incorporating these into the radical and significant economic and social changes which have to be brought into through this ethical framework. Third, this must also have this idea of recognition where the affirmative action must be towards identifying the care economy as part of entire economic framework such that economics itself becomes more ethical, and hence the society now also becomes fundamentally valuing even the work done by the other gender, even though there is no money involved in those transactions. Fourth, this will now create the society which is equal and which is just. And if you recall the current data which suggests that merely 11% of the police force is female, nearly 48% of the female workforce in the entire labor force participation or entire labor force that you consider would say that they had to go through this particular challenge of trade-off between whether to care for the household or whether to look for their career. Such a challenge in the form of a binary is not there for much of the other gender that you are considering as dominant. These particular fundamental changes can be entertained, can be introduced only when there are certain fundamental changes in the disciplinary frameworks and the institutional frameworks. Mere representation is a mere tokenism. this particular mere representation and tokenism must give way to the substantial shift towards the ethical and constitutional framework to be implemented in Indian society. Moving to the next article, we will discuss this article titled Mineral Exploration, Industry Pushes for a More Investor-Friendly Model. The industry groups in India who are into this mineral sector are pushing for such investor-friendly model. What is it? We'll look into it. It is significant from the GS paper 3 mains perspective, where the mobilization of resources can be one aspect. This can include even the physical resources. Second, this is also important for the preliminary examination from the economy perspective. Moving ahead, look at this particular previous year question asked in 2016. What are the purposes of district mineral foundations in India? Something in relationship with mineral resources, either in terms of governance or in terms of economy or in terms of ecology, can become important for your preliminary examination. Moving ahead, what is the context? A particular corporate group in India, Vedanta Group, was recommending the mining ministry in India in order to shift to what is referred to as investor-friendly classification code pertaining to the resources. In order to what? In order to make sure that private investment is getting spurred in the India's mining sector. This particular problem of very low or subdued investment in mining sector was being attributed to the adoption of this resource classification code by the government. Now, they say that we have to adopt the Joint Ore Reserve Committee classification as developed by the mining experts in Australia. Both of these are important for prelims. Second, we have to adopt this in place of the currently used UN framework classification. The persistent difference, significant difference between these two classifications is that the second one, that is UNFC, does not mandate disclosures pertaining to the economic viability of mining exploration projects. Unless this is displayed, investors cannot happen, is what the opinion of these industry bodies. Second, this would make the mining industry hence unattractive to the private sector, and hence there is a hindrance to the flow of private investment into the sector. They show these figures whereby FDI received by this particular industry has been valued merely at $1.1 billion, which is just 0.4% of the gross equity inflows to this mineral sector across the world, which amounts to nearly $259 billion. Hence, the Indian mining industry has already developed and recommended the Indian Mineral Industry Code in 2019, which is based on the same template as the JORC classification. However, this has not been implemented yet. Now, unlike the other sectors, the mining sector has one particular complication, that it has to deal with the natural processes, whereby the knowledge of these natural processes would remain incomplete prior to the commencement of mineral extraction. This is the major hindrance of mineral sector. Second, this is also critical for mining sector to communicate effectively and transparently with the investment community, whereby they have to use internationally accepted terminology and definitions in order to standardize these processes for the investor community, and hence they can become investment friendly. Both of these must be there, which are critical for the mineral sector. This is where the significance of resource classification code comes into picture, whereby this can assess resources and reserves in a particular mineral block. Number two, this can aid you to prepare geological reports in order to facilitate the auction for both exploration and also mining. And three, this also gives you the mining company to evaluate its own assets, the nature of these particular assets and how profitable they would be. Moving ahead, you have one such classification which is referred to as UNFC, as we have already discussed, wherein you have classification and reporting of both reserves and resources of what? Of solid fuels and mineral commodities, and hence it also provides a standardized, internationally recognized system for reporting of both reserves and resources. Moving ahead, you have certain features which are significant of these UNFC. That is, it follows what is referred to as three-dimensional system, whereby there are three particular axes. One is geological assessment of these reserves and resources. Two, feasibility assessment of mining and exploring these reserves and resources. And three, their economic viability. This has been prepared by UN Economic Commission for Europe and non-ECE member countries, which are other UN agencies which also participated in the preparation of these particular classification. On the other hand, as we have already seen, you have what is called as JORC classification. As we have seen that this is an Australian code in order to report mineral exploration results, mineral resources and or resource. This is what they refer to as MER, MR and OR classification. Second, this particular one has a professional code of practice that sets the minimum standard for public reporting of mineral resources, wherein you also have a mandatory system for the classification of these mineral resources according to the levels of confidence in the geological knowledge and technical and economic considerations in the public reports. This is something that is very, very significant here. Fourth, as we see, it was produced by Australasian Joint Ore Reserves Committee. This is important for your preliminary. This was first published in 1918 and then it was later updated in 2012. What is the significant difference here? The UNFC includes undiscovered and uneconomic resources also, whereby the investment may go wasted in exploring and ideating these projects. On the other hand, JORC is having the reporting of reserves which are economically viable with high geological confidence, which have been confirmed through the studies. This is clearly in line with what is referred to as CRISCO template. Now, what is this CRISCO as a body that we see? It's a voluntary body. Keep in mind that it is not an internationally recognized UN body, but it is a voluntary body where its members comprise of national reporting organizations which are responsible for developing mineral reporting codes and also standards and also guidelines. Given this is in line with this, more about CRISCO, what you see is it was formed in 1994. It consists of 15 member countries including USA, Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, South Africa and EU. All these are important for your preliminary examination. Moreover, its membership to CRISCO requires the countries to produce reporting codes which are in compliance with the CRISCO template. India was admitted to CRISCO in 2019. This is significant following the registration of our IMIC, as I was referring to earlier, as a CRISCO compliant code. Moreover, this considers 10 factors which are modifying factors, including legal factors, infrastructural factors, processing factors, metallurgical factors and such other factors, whereby you also have its primary function is to make sure that investors and their advisors have comprehensive information and that is relevant to make clear and categorical financial and technical decisions. It provides a governance system in order to make sure that competent and ethical reporting is happening by the industry professionals. Moreover, one cannot report resources in the CRISCO system unless one establishes that there is a reasonable prospect for eventual economic extraction. This is what becomes key for investor-friendly models because they are looking for profits. Hence, in the conclusion, we have to make sure that we are adopting a bridged model where this considers both UNFC and also JORC recommendations. The UNFC model, as we see, is that it is comprehensive and diverse, which also takes into consideration its wider application in the policy model, whereby it is a useful tool for the governments to see beyond the investor's point of view and look into the other dimensions of the mining sector which have to be considered, such as the strategic decisions, maintenance of a national inventory, etc. On the other hand, JORC specifically satisfies the current industry needs, whereby its classification in preparing its classification remaining the investor friendly, which is based on the geological reports which are thoroughly in tune with the possibility of economic exploration of these particular mineral blocks. Hence, the government can come up with a hybrid system where this can use UNFC for internal policy making, but JORC for mineral auctioning. Moving to the next article, we'll discuss this article where RBI has directed the card issuers to let customers choose the card network. Even though on the face of it, this appears to be a normal news, we shall look into the details which gives you certain significant things about the preliminary examination requirements. It is important for understanding what are those various changes that we are making with regard to the payment system in India. And this is again for preliminary examination can be considered under either GS economy or even under the issues or news which are of day-to-day relevant from the national and international importance. Look at this previous year question asked in 2023. Very important that this gives you a direction that this particular topic is also in tune with the requirement. Consider the following statements. The Reserve Bank of India's recent directives relating to the storage of payment system data, popularly known as the data diktat, command the payment system providers that first, they shall ensure that entire data relating to the payment systems operated by them are stored in a system only in India. Second, they shall ensure that the systems are owned and operated by public sector enterprises. Third, they shall submit the consolidated system audit report to the Controller and Auditor General of India by the end of the calendar year. Which of the above statements are correct? Clearly in tune with the examination, this particular topic has to be discussed. If you look into this particular question alone, clearly, as you see here, if you consider this second statement, this will stifle the competition between the private sector and public sector, and in general the competition itself, and hence this cannot be given as a directive. Second, if you look at even this, giving reports to the Controller and Auditor General of India through a system of audit report is also not possible to be given as a diktat. Hence, the first statement alone is what we have to consider, where this particular directive or circular was asking these systems to operate the data in such a way that it is stored in India itself. This is referred to as data localization. Clearly, as you see that this particular question is giving us certain clear direction. Look at the context. In this particular topic, what you see is RBI has directed what they refer to as card issuers, and there can be various card issuers as you see here. One, the authorized payment system providers, and two, the banks or non-banking corporations or entities, where they are asked not to enter into any arrangement or agreement with the card networks that restrains them from availing the services of the other card networks. Clearly, if you see, they are trying to focus upon one, competition, and two, what is referred to as choice. How? We shall look into the details. Prior to that, we shall see how these two particular expressions have been defined, that whatever that we have used in the context. One, the authorized card network. As you see here, there are certain card networks which have been allowed in order to make sure that a particular transaction is complete. In this, you have American Express Banking Corporation as one network, Diners Club International Limited, MasterCard Asia or Pacific, then National Payments Corporation of India, who owned this RuPay as card network, and then Visa Worldwide Limited. All these are certain card networks that we can refer to from the RBI's definition. Now, why are these card networks are actually required? As you clearly know that A as a consumer will go to a retailer referred to as B. When he goes there, he makes certain what is called as purchases. When you are purchasing something, you are paying them. So, transaction whatever is occurring here is referred to as an economic exchange or transactionary exchange. In this particular exchange, when you pay something, that good or service will be delivered to you. And in this, if I am using any particular means where money is not available in the physical form, where I am trying to pay it in an electronic form, then I have to use certain means. Card payment is one such means. When you are using this particular card, what you are trying to do is, you are trying to tell that the bank with which you have your account, in which you have saved your money, has transacted with the bank which is having the account of the merchant. And when both of these are interacting with each other, as you know that both of them might not have accounts in the same bank. When they are different banks, then when you are asking the merchant bank, that is the bank with which the merchant is having their account, to access your account, then in this particular transaction it may be possible. However, if you look at the number of such transactions that you are making with various banks or various merchants who have their accounts with various banks, then in each of these cases, the bank with which you have the account must have their respective agreements, which is not possible and feasible, and which makes the cost of transaction very, very high. It is in this sense, the bank will be entering into an agreement with what is referred to as a card network, where it is this card network which try to make the transaction feasible and possible by having such agreements with all the banks in India. Now, this card network will be acting as the medium between the bank with which you have the account and the bank with which the merchant has his account. Given this, there is one practice that we have. One particular bank will enter into an agreement with one particular merchant bank. Now, what you see is, the bank with which you have an account will enter into an agreement with or arrangement with one particular card network. Now, what is the problem with this? The problem with this is that, for example, if you consider Visa Worldwide or even the MasterCard Asia, both of these provide these services of being an intermediary in order to complete the transaction. However, they charge high costs for these particular transactions. On the other hand, RuPay would provide these services at a much cheaper cost. Now, given this scenario, a particular bank would be benefited when they are having agreement with RuPay in terms of the cost and benefit, if you make a comparison. And it is in this particular respect, the agreement with RuPay will make these transactions cheaper. Second, if you look at this definition of payment system providers, these are the entities which are authorized by RBI to set up and operate what is referred to as a payment system in India under what is called as the Payment and Settlement Systems Act 2007. Now, under this, you have three kinds of payment possibilities. One, the payment systems which are operated by RBI itself, such as RTGS and NEFT. On the other hand, you have the payment systems which are operated by NPCL, which is referred to as whatever that UPI payments that you make or Bharat Pay related payments that you are making. The third one is referred to as the card network, where you have either debit card or credit card, and these debit cards and credit cards would be issued by the bank, and you will be utilizing them with the merchants for the purpose of transactions with the help of utility of these card networks which act as what is referred to as intermediary between the bank with which you have the account and the bank with which the merchant has the account. Moving ahead, we know what is the current practice that we have already discussed. The authorized card networks tie up with these banks or non-banks for the issuance of credit cards, and hence the choice of network for a card issued to the customer is being decided by the card issuer but not by the choice of the consumer. And hence, this is linked to the arrangements that the card issuers have with card networks in terms of their bilateral agreements or arrangements. What now RBI has done is, these card issuers now have to provide an option to their eligible customers to choose from both multiple card networks at this time of the issue. Number one, by which you are trying to increase the competition, whereby you can reduce the cost of spending by the bank and also by the consumer ultimately. Second, it is also giving you the choice to choose, whereby you might choose the one where the cost of such particular card network utility would be lesser for you. Second, for existing card holders, the option needs to be provided at the time of the next renewal, as RBI has stated. And lastly, what you see is these directions will be coming into the effective enforcement 6 months from the date of issue of this particular circular. Clearly, this is in tune with improving the payment system in India, easing the payment system in India, whereby the current burden on UPI payments where the volume of transaction is high, value of transaction is low, can be now shifted to the card system that we have, particularly the credit card system, where the cost of borrowing is very, very high because of the high cost of these card networks which are being utilized as intermediaries in these transactions. Moving to the next article, we'll discuss this article titled, What Makes ASML's Chip Making Machine a Scientific Marvel? In this, fundamentally, there are two technology and science related ideas which have been discussed, which will make this article important. As I said, this is important from this basic principle referred to as Rayleigh scattering criterion, which is fundamental in the operation of this machine. And second, this is also important from the semiconductor industry point of view, where we are trying to become self-sufficient. Moving ahead, look at this previous year question asked in 2022. Which one of the following is the context in which the term qubit is mentioned? A. Cloud services, B. Quantum computing, C. Visible light communication technologies, and D. Wireless communication technologies. So this terminology and the basic principles become important for your preliminary examination. This is what this particular question is directing us to. Look at the context. We clearly know that as you move ahead in terms of the semiconductor revolution, there is one particular thing that you can clearly observe. The size of the semiconductor is becoming smaller, and at the same time, it is becoming more and more faster and hence more efficient. This is what you visualize here in the terms of context. Second, in this particular article, they are referring to a machine which is referred to as high NA EUV machine. What that particular machine is, we'll look into, because this particular machine is being hailed as cutting edge machine in making these new chips which are of more efficient, more faster and more smaller. What are those semiconductors by definition? Remember, the semiconductors are those small physical devices where you will use them to store binary values in terms of 0, 1, whereby they will be able to perform mathematically certain operations. Second, because of these operations as a sum, you would see that computers would be computing, and also most of the contemporary electronic devices, information and communication technology devices will be also performing their actions. And also these semiconductors, as understood from fundamentals of physics, lie somewhere between conductors and insulators in terms of what is referred to as conductivity, and hence these can be seen in the form of certain elements called as silicon, and this can also be seen in the form of compounds such as gallium arsenide. Moving ahead, what you see with regard to these semiconductors and their potential in India, clearly they are worth nearly $80 billion as on today, and they will be able to generate 6 lakh jobs by 2030, and moreover they are expected to generate nearly $110 billion of production value by 2030. And as you see, India is striving to become a hub for semiconductor design, and hence we want to manufacture nearly 2000 chips designed per year in Indian economy. Moreover, they have a significant role in the global semiconductor design, as we are aspiring to become part of that global supply chain, and also 20% of the world's semiconductor design engineers would be hailing from India. Looking at this potential, now we shall look at that basic technology which is involved, where you apply this particular machine or use this particular machine. This is done through what is referred to as semiconductor lithography, where you are trying to print intricate circuits over these particular physical devices which have an extreme precision and which has been done with extreme precision. These particular machines that we have seen earlier would automate this particular process of imprinting these intricate circuits. Third, the company referred to as ASML, which is headquartered in Netherlands, would be making itself an absolute monopoly of this particular manufacturing process in the market. Third, as you clearly see that as they have unveiled this high NA EUV machine, this is going to be a game changer in the entire semiconductor industry. As we see this uses this extreme ultraviolet photolithography as a next generation technology to make these particular semiconductors. Now, what is this EUV photolithography technology? As you clearly see, the mold of the circuits of a transistor, which is the fundamental part of what is referred to as semiconductor, are transferred to a silicon wafer, wherein it is coated with a light sensitive material, and this light sensitive material is referred to as photoresist. Number one. Number two, when light is shined upon the photoresist, what happens is this entire mold gets solidified, and then its gaps will be filled up with the wires in order to form what is called as transistor. Now, in this they use what is referred to as Rayleigh scattering criterion. So, the smallest size of the semiconductor is because of this particular criterion, which is making it possible. In this particular thing, the size of the feature that you are focusing upon in semiconductor will be projected on the wafer, which is proportional to the wavelength of the light that is being used and inversely proportional to the aperture of the lens, which is collecting this particular light and which is projecting it onto the wafer. In this particular thing, what you see is as you start reducing the wavelength of the size, you will also start reducing the size of this particular semiconductor. Third, inverse proportionality means whatever the aperture that you have, it captures more amount of light such that all this amount of light will be focused upon very small area on the wafer. So, the greater the aperture, the smaller will be the feature size that you see. This is what makes it smaller and smaller. Moreover, what you see is the engineers have reduced the smallest size imprinted on the wafer by reducing the wavelength of the light that is shined on the photoresist. Moreover, as you see here, there is something referred to as Moore's law. What is this Moore's law? Do you observe that the number of transistors in an integrated circuit are getting doubled every 2 years, by which it means that there is an observation and projection of a particular historical trend. That historical trend is rather than law of a physics, this empirical relationship is related to the experience in the production in such a way that whatever that size of the semiconductor is getting reduced and the efficiency is being increased is related to this pattern of 2 years time frame upon which all this is occurring. Moving to the next article, we will discuss this article where India is asking IMF to make sure that Pakistan is not diverting the loans that it is getting from IMF on certain credit facilities to foot their defense bills. This article is important from the perspective of various IMF lending instruments that might be asked in the exam and also from the perspective of international organizations. Look at this previous year question. Rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility are related to the provisions of lending by which of the following, asked in 2022. Asian Development Bank, IMF, you see here UNEP Finance Initiative and World Bank. As you clearly see in this particular question, it is thoroughly in tune with the particular examination requirements. The context is, as we have already discussed, India has advocated for strict monitoring of the IMF's emergency funds that are being allocated to the Pakistan in order to make sure that they are not being misused in order to pay their defense expenditures or repaying the loans to other countries where from they have taken the loans. Second, you have to also keep in mind that IMF has approved a 9-month standby arrangement for Pakistan. What is the sum? It is worth about $3 billion in order to support Pakistan's economic stabilization program. There is a restructuring program that IMF has recommended and it is being implemented. There are certain lending instruments that the IMF has which are the focus of us for this particular examination requirement. as we clearly see, the first arrangement as it has been in the news is referred to as standby arrangement, whereby your short-term or potential balance of payments problem that you are facing, which the Pakistan is facing, can be addressed. Eligibility is, it can be accessed by both emerging economies and also the developed economies or advanced market economies. This market economy is very, very important here. The second is the standby credit facility, which is similar to the standby arrangement that we have discussed. However, this is applicable to only the low income countries. Second, you have what is referred to as extended fund facility. This is applicable to emerging as well as advanced market economies. However, this is used to address long-term balance of payments problem, whereby you are impeded by the structural problems related to your own economic growth. Fourth one is extended credit facility, which is specific to the low income countries, where you will be addressing the medium to long term structural issues faced by your own growth process. On the other hand, you have rapid financing instrument that was asked in the exam, where this is applicable to all the member countries, which provides rapid financial assistance in order to meet that urgent BOP crisis. Rapid credit facility is again rapid financial assistance during the crisis situations, but particularly the low income countries. The flexible credit line as you have is for the countries with strong policy frameworks, economic policy frameworks, where it supports with such countries with strong policy frameworks in order to meet their immediate cash crunch without ongoing conditions. Moreover, you have lastly the precautionary and liquidity line, whereby the liquidity requirements of the countries which have the sound economic policy frameworks will be met with, whereby this is applicable to the countries with sound but not strong enough frameworks in order to get the flexible credit line. Having completed the discussion over the articles, we shall now move to certain practice questions. Take this first prelims practice question. Consider the following statements. First statement is, according to the Payments and Settlement Systems Act 2007, National Payments Corporation of India Limited is the sole regulator of payment systems in India, which is a false statement. Second, the Udgam portal, which was in news recently, facilitates the search of unclaimed deposits across multiple banks, which is the correct statement. Hence, answer has to be B here. Move to the second question. With reference to the UN Framework Classification for Resources, consider the following statements. It's a system for the classification and reporting of reserves and resources of solid fuels and mineral commodities, which is correct statement. Second one, it was developed by UN Economic Commission for Europe, which is also a correct statement. One cannot report mineral resources in the UNFC system unless one establishes that there is a reasonable prospect for eventual economic extraction, which is a false statement. Hence, answer has to be B here. Moving to the third question, catastrophe containment and relief trust and precautionary and liquidity line are related to the provisions of lending by which of the following? Clearly, IMF is the answer. Fourth one, consider the following, wherein first one is habitat loss, second one wildlife trade, third one disasters, and fourth one encroachment of the forest land. Which of the above are the reasons for human-wildlife conflict? As you clearly see, all of the above are the reasons. Moving to the fifth one, consider the following statements regarding human-wildlife conflict mitigation. First one, National Human-Wildlife Conflict Mitigation Strategy and Action Plan is a guiding document developed by the National Board for Wildlife, which is a false statement. Second one, it aims for holistic mitigation, emphasizing on sustainable and inclusive approaches, which is the right statement, and hence answer has to be B alone. Moving to this mains practice question, the economic basis of the society is unethical in structure. In light of the above statement, critically analyze the ethical challenges in Indian society from the vantage point of gender. A 250 words question, a 15 marker. For this particular question, one should present the economics as the foundational basis for the existence and sustenance of the society. one should write this in the introduction, and then in the body you may present the ethical problems within such economic structure which had become the foundational basis for the society, which we have discussed in the article. Then you may debate around the issues which are related to each of the components of this structure that we have discussed. Then we will arrive at those fundamental layers of ethical problems related to such structure. And in the conclusion, you may write that suggesting some possible ethical changes which can be brought into the society in the form of such as empathy or valuing the care economy in this economic structure, and then ensuring safety nets within such economic structure for all the members of the community, whereby you bring in the society which is ethically sustainable and ethically clearly in tune with the foundational principles of the Constitution, which is equality and justice. That's all for today, aspirants. Thank you one and all for watching this video. Please do like, share and comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS, the one-stop destination for all of your UPSC examination related requirements. Thank you.